Azrinaz Mazhar Hakim was just 25 years old, a rising star in the world of journalism, making waves and living her best life. But everything changed when she married the Sultan of Brunei, one of the richest monarchs on the planet. It sounds like a fairy tale, right? But as the old saying goes, all that glitters isn't gold. And that couldn't be more true for poor Azrinaz. Welcome back to Royal Buzz. Today, we're diving into the deeply controversial and heartbreaking story of how this young journalist went from being one of the most powerful queens in the world. Well, you'll see. Sit tight and make sure you stay till the end of this video. But before we get into the story, let's hear about our main characters for a minute. Azrinaz Mazhar Hakim grew up in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, in a pretty typical, tight-knit family. From an early age, she stood out as smart and ambitious, always aiming high. She had a passion for journalism, which led her to dive into the world of TV reporting, a field that perfectly combined her love for storytelling and a sharp interest in what was happening around the world. With her natural charisma and hard work, she quickly became a well-known face on Malaysian TV, earning a reputation for being a talented and engaging journalist. Before crossing paths with the Sultan, Azrinaz was already on a roll, making a name for herself in the media world and living the life she'd always dreamed of. Azrinaz was 33 years younger than the Sultan when she became his third wife, and that's when her life turned around completely. Now, let's talk about the Sultan for a second. This guy isn't just rich, he's obscenely rich. We're talking $28 billion rich, with a palace that makes Buckingham Palace look like a summer cottage. The Sultan of Brunei, Hassan al-Bolkiah, lives in Istana Nur al-Iman, the largest residential palace in the world, boasting nearly 1,800 rooms and more luxury than you can imagine. He owns over 7,000 luxury vehicles, including Ferraris, Bentleys, and a gold-plated Rolls-Royce. Because why settle for regular old paint when you can have gold, right? Let's not forget about his $20,000 haircuts. Yep, you heard that right. He spends more on a single trim than most people do on their rent. It's safe to say that this guy is living on a different planet. Now, with all that money and power, who wouldn't want to marry him, right? I mean, who doesn't want to live a real-life fairy tale? But here's the catch. The fairy tale isn't what it seems to be. Behind all that glitz and glamour is a world full of scandals and drama. The Sultan's life may look like it's straight out of a movie, but it's more of a soap opera with a never-ending string of controversies. He's been married multiple times, starting with his first wife, Queen Saleha, who also happens to be his cousin. Then there was his second wife, Mariam, a former flight attendant whose marriage ended in a very public and messy divorce. After that came Azrinaz, his third wife, whose story unfolded in a not-so-pretty way. Now, how did Azrinaz and the Sultan end up together? Azrinaz was already making a name for herself as a sharp, talented journalist, so it's not surprising that she caught the eye of the Sultan during one of her assignments or at an event. The Sultan, known for his love of beauty and charm, was likely drawn to Azrinaz because she wasn't just another pretty face. She was smart, ambitious, and had her own successful career, which was a refreshing change for him after his previous marriages. But let's not forget that Azrinaz wasn't stepping into a typical marriage. The Sultan was already married to Queen Saleha and had already divorced his second wife, Mariam. In Brunei, polygamy is legal, so it wasn't exactly a scandal for the Sultan to take a third wife. But here's the thing, being the third wife isn't exactly a walk in the park, especially when the first wife has been the queen for decades. You're entering a well-established royal family, and that means navigating all sorts of palace politics, unspoken rules, and, let's face it, probably some serious side-eye from the queen. Talk about stepping into the lion's den. But Azrinaz was a strong, accomplished woman in her own right. She wasn't some damsel in distress. After a while, their relationship eventually turned serious, and they secretly got married. For Azrinaz, it might have felt like a dream, One minute she was living a regular life, and the next she's part of the Brunei royal family. The secrecy, the sudden shift into royal life, and the pressure that came with it must have been intense, turning what seemed like a fairy tale into a much more complicated reality. After her secret marriage to the Sultan was finally made public, Azrinaz embraced her new role as a royal. She moved into Istana Nur Liman and started establishing herself as a queen in her own right. It wasn't long before Azrinaz gave birth to two beautiful children, a son, Prince Abdul Wakil, and a daughter, Princess Amira. And for a while, it seemed like she was living the dream. She had her children, her status as a royal, and all the riches one could ever want. Behind the shiny walls of the palace, not everything was as perfect as it seemed. You see, the life of a second wife in a royal family isn't as fun as it seems. Sure, there's luxury, but there's also a whole lot of pressure. The photos from that time show a young Azrinaz often looking tense, maybe even sad. And who can blame her? She was living in a palace, sure, but she was also living under constant scrutiny in a family where she was very much an outsider. The Sultan's first wife had been with him for decades and wasn't exactly excited to share her husband with a younger, beautiful new bride. You can only imagine the stress. She might have had all the material things, but emotionally, she likely felt isolated and lonely, things money just can't fix. Then, in 2010, out of nowhere, the Sultan announced that he was divorcing Azrinaz. Just like that, it was over. She was kicked out of the palace, stripped of her royal titles, and maybe worst of all, separated from her kids. The Sultan decided that their son and daughter would stay with him in Brunei, living their royal lives, while Azrinaz was sent back to Malaysia, alone and with nothing. Now, just imagine that for a second. One day, you're surrounded by every luxury you could ever dream of, with your kids right there by your side, and the next, it's all ripped away. You're no longer a princess, you're just you. And the worst part? You can't even see your kids. They're left behind in a palace on the other side of the world, while you're left to pick up the pieces of a life that's been completely shattered. For any mother, losing her children like that would be absolutely devastating, and for Azrinaz, it was no different. She was forced to start over from scratch back in Malaysia. But here's where the story takes a surprising turn, because instead of crumbling under the weight of it all, Azrinaz did something truly remarkable. She rebuilt her life. For years, Azrinaz stayed out of the spotlight. After all, what do you do when the whole world has seen your rise and fall? She kept a low profile, focused on healing, and slowly began to build a new life for herself. And then, in 2018, Azrinaz made headlines again, this time for a much happier reason. She'd found love again. She married Feroz Khan Abdul Hamid, a man with no royal titles, no palaces, just a genuinely good guy with a lot of heart. Feroz is a down-to-earth businessman with a solid reputation, known for his humility and kindness. He didn't come with the trappings of royalty, but what he did offer was something more valuable: love, respect, and a sense of normalcy. Azrinaz and Feroz had been close friends for years. Their relationship was built on mutual respect and understanding, with none of the power dynamics that defined her previous marriage. Eventually, that deep friendship blossomed into something more, leading to a love story that was far more grounded and genuine. When the time came to get married, they kept things super low-key. Unlike her royal wedding, this was a small, intimate ceremony with only close friends and family. So secret that even the press didn't catch wind of it. For Azrinaz, it was a breath of fresh air. No pomp, no pressure, just two people in love. This wasn't the high-stakes world of Brunei's royal court. This was real life, with real love. And it brought Azrinaz a kind of happiness that no palace could ever provide. Together, they've had two daughters, and from the looks of it, Azrinaz is living a simpler but far more fulfilling life than the one she left behind. Even though Azrinaz has started a new chapter, the past is never really behind her. She still deeply misses her children and often writes to them on their birthdays. In one especially emotional Instagram post, she wrote about her daughter, saying, "I think about you and miss you every single day. Seeing you at your recent wedding made me so proud. You've grown into such a graceful person." Prince Abdul Wakil is now 16 and Princess Amira is 15. They're growing up in the royal palace, surrounded by all the luxury and privilege. Prince Abdul Wakil has been spotted taking on more public duties, preparing for his role in the royal family, whilst Princess Amira is known for her elegance and has been making appearances at royal events. But they're doing it without their mother by their side. For Azrinaz, this must be a constant source of pain. She can only hope that one day, when they're older and more in control of their own lives, they'll come to see her, reconnect, and maybe even forgive her for not being there as they grew up. So the next time you find yourself dreaming about what it would be like to live in a palace, to marry into royalty, remember Azrinaz's story. The grass isn't always greener on the other side. It's just a different shade of green, and sometimes it comes with a hefty price tag. So what do you think? Do you think it's too cruel to keep a mother from seeing her kids? Or is that just the price for living in the royal spotlight? Let us know in the comment section below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel for more stories like this. See you next time.